Having defeated the plans of the Nazgul and the Trollshaws to unite the Wood Trolls into a force that would take on Imladris, Lord Elrond sends us to the north, into the lands of the Misty Mountains. There he says that the missing Black Rider that we have been chasing for so long will probably try and to unite the Goblin tribes and the evil men of the north to do what he could not accomplish with the Wood Trolls. There, at the very southern end of the Misty Mountains, we meet Gloin, another of the companions of Bilbo Baggins. He tells us that he has been sent here from Eriador on a very important mission from Dane Ironfoot, who is now king under the mountain after the death of Thorin. Spoiler alert if y'all haven't read, 90-year-old books or seen 3 or 4-year-old movies now. But he tells us he's on a mission from Dane and he cannot leave himself. But he says if we will send through the Misty Mountains, through the pass of Whitecleft, into the Bruinen sources, that he has heard tell of a great goblin chieftain named Gersmat, and that if we take him out, that will help solve part of the problem. We travel there, we defeat Gersmat, and we find that he is working with the Dour Hand dwarves that they have thrown in with the goblins here in the Misty Mountains. Gloin is very disturbed by this news. He tells us that his mission from Dane was to come here and track down the last refuge of the evil dwarves, the Dour Hands, who the Longbeards have been fighting for so long now, and to try and get rid of their scourge from these lands. He states that his spies have tracked them to an old ruined fortress named Gabilazan, and that the spies saw not only Dour Hands at Gabilazan, but also saw the undead dwarf Skorgrim and a Nazgul there. Now, I'm going to get off the track for here just a moment and mention Skorgrim. This shows, I'd just like to bring up one of the disadvantages and advantages of the fact of just following along the epic line here. Skorgrim, we've seen him appear already once back over there when we were fighting the Black Wolves. But he's just this dwarf that appears as far as we know. We know nothing about him. If you have to play through the dwarf and elf beginning instances in order to see the Nazgul or the evil White Lords and the Nazgul create this undead dwarf named Skorgrim. It's in their introductory things, like where we went to Archet, where men and hobbits go to Archet, and you learn about the Black Wolves and stuff. Over there, you would learn about the Dour Hands, which we've also seen come up and don't really have a background for. The Dour Hands are an evil group of dwarves who have thrown in with the dark forces. Thrown in with the Nazgul and the goblins in order to try and keep power and to regain the control of things such as the Lonely Mountain and Thorin's Halls that they once had. So, I said, it encourages you to play as more than one type of character. It encourages you to go and try the different races so you can see the different branches of the story. But it also, if you only go up one branch, if you only play one group of races, it also leaves you kind of scratching your head at times of who are the Dour Hands, who is this Skorgrim that keeps appearing, that sort of thing. So we're back on story now. Gloin tells us that Gabilazan is a very strong, nigh impregnable fortress, and that we will have to use subterfuge to get into it. And being that I am a burglar, this is right up my alleyway. So he sends me to find the plans to the fortress in the cornerstone, which will be hidden somewhere in one of the guard shacks. We travel there, and we are able to take out the guards and recover the plans of Gabilazan from inside one of the cornerstones, which we then take back to Gloin. Gloin basically lets us know that, as we saw in the book and movie The Hobbit, every dwarf fortress has a secret entrance, and that there are no exceptions for the ones here in the Misty Mountains. He says that far to the north there is an ancient dwarf fortress called Heligrod, and that after it fell to the dragon Thorog, after the dragon Thorog took it over and the dwarves fled and basically abandoned this area of the Misty Mountains, that all the keystones that allowed you to enter the secret doors to the fortresses in this area were all held at a place called Iskeld's Vault. So we travel there and fight our way through snow beasts in order to get the keystones that have been stored there and find the one that will let us get into Gabilazan. We return them back to Gloin, who decides that this is the ideal opportunity to strike. He says that we will be able to take out the Nazgul that we are searching for, and in addition, that the dwarves will be able to take out Skorgrim and the Dourhand Curse once and for all. He believes that this is such an important mission that he sends his son Gimli along with us, and calls him forth from Rivendell to accompany us on this mission. We make our way to the fortress that has been overrun by the Dourhands and fight our way in so that we can try and find the secret entrance to the inner keep. We discover on the way that not only are we fighting the dwarves, but that we are also having to fight giants. That apparently the Dourhands have fallen so low in their degradation that they will not only throw in with goblins, but they will throw in with the mortal enemy of the dwarves, the giants, as well. We are finally able to make our way through the secret entrance and into the hidden keep within. There we finally confront Skorgrim Dourhand, and we are able to take down this undead shell of a dwarf. However, the Black Rider manages to escape, as well as an evil spirit which rises from the body of Skorgrim and says that his task is nearly at hand before he too disappears into the night. Before his defeat, Skorgrim monologues a bit, as any good villain does, and lets us know that he and the Nazgul are planning on moving to Heligrod, the abandoned dwarf fortress in the north. Gloin tells us that this is disturbing. He tells us that Heligrod was once the northernmost outpost of Khazad-dûm, back when Moria was still populated by dwarves and was known by that name. That it did not have any mithril, but it was rich in gold and jewels, and that's what attracted the dragon Thorog there. Durin the Fifth, the next to last of the kings of Khazad-dûm, traveled with a great force of dwarves to Heligrod and defeated Thorog. However, he was killed in the battle as well. The death and the destruction held a heavy sway over the place, so that is whenever the dwarves abandoned it and moved all the treasures that were contained therein back to Khazad-dûm, and that he is very concerned about what the Nazgul may want in those shadowy abandoned halls. We travel to the north of the Misty Mountains, to the area of Heligroth itself, to do a little scouting. And there at the treasury, one of the outlying treasuries, we defeat a number of wights, and off of them we get a sigil showing that they are the spawn of the White Lord Drugoth the Black. Gloin tells us that he does not know what this portends, and sends us back to Imladris to seek the counsel of Lord Elrond. Lord Elrond is very disturbed by this, and says that Drugoth the Black is a very powerful Gaunt Lord, and that if he and the Nazgul have traveled to Heligrod, he is worried that the cold there may have preserved the body of Thorog the dragon, and that they may be trying to raise him as a dragon wight, as a undead dragon, and that this would be a formidable foe on the northern borders of Imladris, and that would be one that he does not know if the strength of Rivendell would be able to overcome. He therefore sends us to the north on a mission to stop the raising of the undead dragon. We travel back through the Misty Mountains up to the treasury of Heligrod, where we enter through Helgrod's secret entrance. These dwarves might really want to rethink this whole secret entrance plan. Deep in the caves beneath the treasury, we find the cavern where Thorog and Durin fought their last battle, and there before us lies the dead corpse of the dragon himself. And as expected, there is the missing Black Rider and Drugoth the Death Lord. We managed, through a combination of sneaking and battles against Oathsworn and Angmarum, to fight our way down into the very vault itself, which contains the body of the dragon and the Nazgul's party who are attempting to raise him. We arrive too late, however, as the Gaunt Lord is able to send a final fell spirit into the corpse of the dragon, raising him as a mighty dragon wight, an undead being. However, our progress through the caves into the vault here has caused the White Lord to lose control of the dragon. We have broken his power over it, and the mighty Thorog rises and flies through a rift in the ceiling into the darkness above. The Nazgul, enraged at our meddling, having foiled his plans once again, sends Drugoth off into the darkness to chase after Thorog, as he says he will deal with us himself. After a protracted battle, we are finally able to defeat, at least temporarily, his corporeal form, sending him once off to Mordor to be reclothed there by the Dark Lord.
The missing Nazgul fled to the ancient ruins of Helegrod, where he and the gaunt Lord Drogoth attempted to raise a dragon as the most terrible of wights. Though the ritual was successful, the Nazgul was sent back to Mordor, and the dragon wight fled. I fear that Drogoth may yet bring the dragon wight under his control, but that is not compared to the burden I must guide south.
Back in Rivendell, Elrond states that while the undead dragon may sometime be a threat, now that the Nazgul is gone, he was probably not the most pressing threat taking place. He sends us to see Aragorn. Aragorn tells us that a long time ago, a band of rangers left from Estelden to march into Angmar against his wishes, and that nothing has ever been heard from them until now, when a message arrived, being carried by a highly injured bird, that at least one of the party had survived the trip into Angmar. He tasks us with heading to the north and seeing if we can find what has happened to the missing band of rangers. We make the journey back to the North Downs, stopping at Estelden. There we meet with the leader of the rangers there, who tells us that yes, that a ranger named Goladir took a large force of their number into Angmar years ago, and that nothing has been heard from them until now. He says that if we wish, we can continue along into Angmar as Aragorn's representative in search of this ranger who sent the message. He suggests that we start looking to the very south, where a town of hillmen reside named Oghair. He said the hillmen are not allies of us, but that neither are they allied with the forces of Carn Dûn. In Oghair, we meet with Coronir, the ranger who sent the message. He states that long ago, when the force of Goladir came here, that they found that the hillmen here were being beset by new forces coming south from Carn Dûn, and that a new sorcerer had set himself up as the steward of Angmar. The hillmen called him the False King because they knew that the true king of Angmar, the Witch King himself, had not returned. Coronir said that Goladir decided to lead the expedition of rangers further to the north to see if they could overthrow this false king, and that Coronir had been left behind as a messenger should something go wrong with the expedition. That is precisely what happened, for as the expedition continued into a swamp and past a line of statues known as the Ramis Duyath, a feeling of dread and oppression came crashing down as the last man passed, and any that tried to pass the statues in either direction after that were stricken dead. Coronir sends us to find one of the lesser stones and take a rubbing of the black speech from it, and see if we can find what the mystery of the stones is and how we may be able to counteract them. His translation of the Black Speech leads us to find that the stones have a heart inside of them. So after much searching, we are able to finally find a lifeless watching stone that doesn't give the dread effect that tries to take our life away. Within that statue, we are able to extract a cracked and broken heart and bring it back to Coronir. Knowing now what we are looking for, we learn of a nearby ceremony in which a sorcerer Toth is trying to put a fell spirit into one of these hearts. We are able to disrupt the ceremony and thus capture one of the hearts, whole but without the spirit forced inside of it. We are then sent across to the Angmar fortress of Baal Rova, the closest of their outposts, and where one of these great and deadly standing stones sits in their encampment. We are try to use the uncharged stone to see if we are able to draw the fell spirit from without of the watchstone. We are, and then we are able to defeat it in combat. Returning to Coronir, he states that this shows that the stones and their fell spirits only have such power over you as you allow them to have. He states that while he has been broken and held in Angmar for far too long to be able to pass the stones, that we should have no problem at all, and he tasks us to go forth, cross past the stones of the Ramas Duith, and to find out what happened to Goladir and the expedition of Rangers.
An army of Dunedain and hillmen from Ohio passed into the eastern reaches of Angmar, only to be caught in the dire trap of Ramas Deluan. Though the secret of the stones has been revealed, no sign of Golodir, the ranger who led them, has yet been found. It can only be hoped that some part of Golodir's army has survived, and that they are able to hinder the advances of Angmar.
Though the Ramas lies across the swamp of the Malinhead like a great wall, we are sent to cross it. Accomplishing this, we find beyond it a dwarven outpost, trapped in Angmar, named Gabil Shathar. There we find the ranger, Brigar, who has been left here to send word should any manage to cross the Ramas. He says that Goladir's party was attacked by orcs and other foul beasts immediately upon crossing the Ramas, and that it was greatly reduced in number. He says the small remnant that remains has set up a camp far to the north, named Gath Forthnir. We travel far to the north, past many orc settlements and outposts, and through the undead regions of the Imlad Balcorth, until finally we reach the eastern edges of Himbar and find the settlement. Within the encampment, we meet Lorniel, Goladir's daughter. She states that she is now in charge of the expedition, as Goladir was foolish enough to ride to Carndum to challenge the false king in combat, and was taken prisoner and is now held within. She does not believe that he is dead, however, and says that the hillmen that live nearby may have clues that allow us to get into Carndum. Obtaining a scroll from one of the hillmen, we bring it back to Lorniel, just to find that it is written in the Black Speech and she cannot translate it. She therefore sends us into another part of Gath Forthnir to meet a friend of her father's, an elf named Laerdan. Laerdan looks at the scroll and says that if it is indeed a key to Carndum, that it will need to be read by better than he. He then sends us to Elrond in Rivendell for him to translate the scroll. And thus begins the first of the many really grand sweeping back and forth quests that we have to go on in this particular adventure. In Rivendell, we meet with Lord Elrond again, who is very happy to hear that some remnant of the Ranger expedition has survived in Angmar. He takes the scroll and translates it into Westron, revealing that it says that a key needs to be forged out of black Angmarum iron. He states that he believes Mithril would also be a substitute for this, so he sends us far to the west to the halls of Thorin, where Dwalin now rules. as I've said, be prepared in these later chapters to be sent hither and yon across the entire fastness of Eriador on these missions. In Thorin's Hall, we meet with Dwalin, who states that mithril is very difficult to find now, and none is to be had in the Blue Mountains. He states, however, that Bilbo was once given a nugget of mithril silver as part of his reward for helping the dwarves take the Lonely Mountain from Smaug. He believes that Bilbo probably did not know the value of what he had and possibly left it behind in the Matham house of Michael Delving whenever he moved to Rivendell. In addition, he says that in the town of Archet, that when the Blackwold Rangers were overthrown, when the Blackwold Bandits were overthrown, that a mysterious key was found upon one of them, and that if we talk to John Brackenbrook, we may be able to get that key from him and find its true significance. From the keeper of the Matham house, we are able to obtain the small chunk of silver that Bilbo had left with him many years before. He states that it was always too light to be real silver, so he didn't see the problem in giving it to us anyway, as it must not have any value. From there, we travel back over to Archet, meeting with John Brackenbrook. He states that he does indeed have the key that was taken off of one of the Blackwold leaders, and that we are welcome to it if, by using it, it will aid in the assistance of the defeat of the Shadow. Returning to Thorin's Hall, we take the nugget of mithril to one of the forge masters inside. He says that melting the mithril will be easy enough to do in the great forges, but that he needs a special mithril-shaping hammer, and that they do not have one here. Dwalin says that such a hammer, Thror's hammer, was brought here long ago from Moria, but they never used it, and that when the Dour Hands took over Thorin's Hall, that the hammer was taken and left in the tomb of Skorgrim, who we have seen before was eventually raised with evil spirits as an evil undead dwarf. We travel to the nearby tomb and find that it is infested with wights and that a great fell spirit, Ferdemil, has been left behind to guard the tomb. We are able to defeat him and in doing so regain Thror's hammer for the Longbeards. Returning it to the halls of Thorin, they are able to shape Bilbo's mithril nugget into a new key of Carn-dûm. We return to Gath-Forthnir, far to the north of Angmar, and give the key to Lorniel. She states that she has heard from the few friendly hillmen in the area that her father is being moved from Carn-dûm, and that now is the time to strike. Using the key cast by the dwarves, we are able to pass the gates of the fortress and move within the grounds within. Fighting our way through the many guards and trolls and orcs who inhabit the grounds, we are eventually able to get past all the guardians and reach the very gates to the inner keep itself. There, the false king Mordorith comes forth with his prisoner Guladir. Throwing him at his feet, he then forces him to watch him as he kills his daughter Lorniel in front of him. He then allows us to take him from Carn-dûm, a broken and shattered man.
Lorniel, daughter of Guladir, sought to free her father from the clutches of Mordorith at Carn-dûm, but her plan was folly, for Mordorith slew her at the gates and allowed Guladir to go free, a broken man. What hope can Eriador have against a wraith nearly the equal of the Witch King himself?